Today we're going to take apart the brand new DCF891, compare it to the DCF894 because we know the DCF891 had some crazy numbers when we reviewed it recently, and it's about double that of the DCF894, but they look pretty much identical. Well, we're going to take it apart, see what's different. Let's do it. Okay, let's just jump right into it. What we have in front of us is the DeWalt DCF894, which I believe is a couple of years old now. It's their kind of first rendition of their mid-torque, or what they call their mid-range impact wrench. So we're going to call it mid-torque. That's just pretty typical what the industry calls it. So DeWalt's first rendition of their mid-torque, which was a great little gun. And then we have the brand new DCF891. Well, these things look just about identical unless you get real close up on the buttons here and maybe on the snout, a little bit of change as well. But as far as the body of this unit, they look pretty much identical. But internally, there's no way they can be, because the output of this new guy is like, we broke free 900 foot-pounds in our review. By the way, if you haven't seen that review, we'll have a link in the description. And just a great review of this impact wrench, because it just does some amazing stuff for this size. And the 894, which again looks identical and is a couple of years old, was probably about half that power. I think they claimed 330 foot-pounds of fastening torque and probably 400 range of breakaway. So again, somewhere around half of the power of the new 891. Well, why is that when they look identical? Doesn't look like they've got a bigger brushless motor. We'll take some measurements of that, but we're going to take some measurements, we're going to take some weights on this, and then we're going to cut them apart. We're going to open them up and take a look inside, see what's different, see what has changed, see why we're getting so much power, not we, how DeWalt is getting so much power out of the new DCF891. Now let's take some measurements real quick on the height. You can tell they're identical still. So about 10 and a half, 10 and a quarter inches. Yeah, about 10 and a quarter there on the front. And then as far as length goes, yeah, right at 7 inches, right at 7 inches there. So as far as size of this unit, you can tell that they're pretty much identical here. One thing we get right here is we get the Made in the USA logo. So with global components, but still glad to see that. Anything that's coming back to the States as far as manufacturing and assembly is concerned, we are all for. So love to see that. Now you will see a little bit of change in the snout here. In the older DCF894, you've got more of a hard step right here, almost a right angle, and this is just kind of rounded off and a little softer angle here on the snout. So don't know if that's purely cosmetics or if something in the dogs on the actual drive dogs or impacting mechanism has actually changed or not. We'll find out in a moment. The other small change, or not, it's not a change, it's just the fact that we had a pin D10 on the DCF894 and the DCF891. It's got this hog ring, but you can get either one in the hog ring style or the pin D10. So that's really nothing to mention other than, you know, if you see that difference, that's what the difference is. And then as far as setting the speeds, on this one you had a high and a low and a wrench mode. I think they call it precision wrench mode. So there's your low, there's your precision wrench, and your highs to the right. And you also get an LED light right there on the front. On the new DCF891, we get more of a push button style system, kind of a soft rubber membrane. And we get 4 modes. We get 1, 2, 3 as far as power modes, and then we get precision wrench mode right there as well. Now that's really only activating as far as the power modes, that's really only in Tighten. So you can see in Loosen, I've still got 100% power no matter what speed I'm in, and that goes for both units here. So if I'm in Loosen, in high, low, that doesn't change. If I go to Tighten, there's low, there's high. Same thing here. If I go to Tighten, there's high, there's low. But if I go to Loosen, that's 1 and 3 the same, so they're identical. Let's get some weights on this. Okay, the older DCF894, you can see I've got the 5 amp hour battery on there, 4 pounds, 14 ounces. DCF891 with the 5 amp hour. Wow, 5 pounds, 2.5 ounces. So you're looking at, what's that, 4.5 ounce difference? Is that 14 ounces? Yeah, so you got 2 ounces there, and then the plus the 2.5 ounces over. Yeah, so you're looking at a 4.5 ounce difference. Let's just verify that we don't have some awkward battery that's added weight to it. 3 pounds, 8 ounces. Wow, you could, yeah, 3 pounds, 12.5. So 4.5 ounce difference. So, and you can feel it in that gun, definitely with your hand. I wouldn't, wow, you definitely can tell a difference in these two units just by picking them up. Now we suspect we're going to see the difference in the Anvil. Maybe the motor, we may be getting a bigger motor, but I don't think so, because if we look at the stats just printed right here on the gun and what's on their website, you'll look at the max RPM is 2,000 on both of these. And the impacts per minute on the new one is 3,250. I think the old one is 3,100. So we've upped the impacts per minute, 150 impacts per minute. I don't know that you're going to notice that in doubling power. I think we're going to see a larger Anvil. I'm pretty sure that's what we're going to see. Probably a heavier duty spring, larger dogs, larger Anvil. So let's get these apart and see. Okay, hopefully we can get a better shot here with these laying down. I'm going to take my favorite handy dandy disassembly tool. It's a tool that is not made anymore. This is prehistoric. This is a rigid 12 volt tool, but it's awesome for disassembly because it's a pressure sensitive tip here. I'll put it in reverse. Just a great tool for this job. By the way, I'm pretty sure you avoid any warranty by doing this. Lay that aside, and let's start on the other. So looking at these, as far as electronics, they look a lot the same. You know what? Look at the size of these wires right here, coming out from the battery to the trigger to the motor, and look at the size wires right here. Definitely a larger gauge wire right here coming up to the electronics. So that's kind of interesting. And then definitely these wires here going to these lugs, and these lugs, a lot larger wire on the new DCF891. So we know it's delivering more power. So is it the same motor? Is it a different motor? That is a good question. Looks like we've stayed the same size. The housing of the Anvil is 228. Yeah, so those are basically the same size. So our housing is still the same size. Looks like our motor's about the same size. Yeah, all that seems like it stayed the same size, but we're definitely delivering more power, current, drawing more current through the wires. At least we've upped the capacity of the wires themselves to be able to hold more current. Got a typical ring gear in there that these planetaries ride on. I'll explain that here in one moment. Just for time's sake, I don't see a ton of change here in the electronics. Again, we could have done a lot there, but let's look at some of the mechanicals. So let's get this out of the way, but let's get this out of here. And I think this is going to be the telltale. So I'm just curious, right off the bat, let's get our scale in here. Here's the older DCF894. So this is the complete impacting mechanism, the Anvil, the planetaries, the snout, everything. 1 pound, 7.9 ounces, so 1 pound, 8 ounces. 1 pound, almost 12 ounces. You know what, let's go to grams. So we're going to go to grams. 790 grams. Yeah, so you're looking at a 110 gram difference between this one and the other one. Now let's find out where that is. I would assume it's going to kind of be in everything inside that snout. So it looks like the same size bearings. Looks like the planetaries doesn't look like it's really changed. Still got 3 planetary gears, which if you don't know, these planetary gears basically convert the spinning, high RPM of a motor, and it takes that motor and basically reduces the RPM, but increases the torque substantially. By now, rather than turning this whole anvil, it's just having to spin these planetary gears. These ride on the actual ring gear inside the housing in here. So you see the center, that in there is basically your drive shaft, or that's your gear that's going inside these planetaries, spinning those, and then it's spinning these planetaries around on that ring gear and then driving the anvil. So it's reducing, it's doing the same thing as the rear end or rear differential in your car, or even the transmission, where it's actually doing some gear reduction and increasing your power. So planetaries, bearings look very much the same. And let's remember, this is our newer one, this is the older one. Pull this out as a unit. Pull this out as a unit. Get that washer off. Get that washer back in there. I will tell you this is very interesting, that it looks like that we have a metal washer, here we have a Teflon washer. So I don't know if that's aiding in reducing friction. So that very well could be. That could be reducing some friction right there, even though this is loaded with grease. That Teflon may be the key to reducing a lot of the friction that we have that's riding metal to metal in there. And then let's take a look at the anvils. So there's the anvil. So there's the 1/2 inch ring style anvil. And here's the 1/2 inch pin detent anvil. You know what's interesting? This anvil, this is the older one, is much heavier than this one here. So which tells me the actual rotating mass, and that's some of the rotating mass as well, but the mass that's actually doing the driving is even heavier over here than that one. So we'll keep this over here. Keep this over here. And by the way, just real quick, I did a whole video on how an impact wrench works, but these are actually called dogs right here. And they collide with basically this anvil and the dogs on the anvil. And what happens is the motor spins it, spins those planetaries, gets this rotating, and as it rotates, it hits this and either drives the socket, because your socket is attached here, so it either drives the socket or it doesn't have enough energy to do that, and so it collapses this spring right here and it jumps over this dog and then comes around and slams into it again. So this spins around, boom, hits it, that spring collapses, it jumps over, comes over at that 2,000 RPM or whatever it is and slams it again. So that's why you hear that dat, 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 dat. It's this slamming and jumping over and slamming and jumping over. And every time that spring is collapsing and expanding for it to be able to hit the next time. So basically, every other time it comes around or twice every revolution, it's actually hitting that. So let's get our scales back in here. So again, we're on grams. And so now we're just measuring the actual planetaries. Oh, let's zero that out. 550 grams. So we're 550 grams for the new DCF891 versus 430. So the actual difference in the rotating assembly, or the part that's actually doing the grunt work, is 120 grams heavier on the new tool. There is your difference right there. And you can even see, in fact, we'll get our scale out of the way, you can see here the difference in the size. So look at the height of that impacting mechanism. Bring this in, we're looking at, and we can switch to millimeter just to be able to see. So looking at what, 27.5 millimeters, and 35.2 millimeters. I mean, look at the difference there. 35.2 versus 27, and we'll convert that back to inches. So looks like just over an inch for the DCF894, and 1.4 inches for the DCF891. So difference in size as far as height. Looks like diameter, we may have a difference as well. So let's go ahead and measure that. .85. Oh yeah. Versus right at 2, 1.98. So 1.85 versus 1.98 in diameter. So there's your difference in weight, and your difference as far as and you can even see in the spring mechanism there, the diameter of the spring is much larger on the DCF891 as well, which it should be, because it's having to overcome a larger amount of inertia when it's actually spinning this heavier mass and getting that going, and then as it overcomes the dogs on the anvil, it needs to have more strength, more energy to actually push those dogs against the next strike, if you will. Very interesting. Let's get these back together. Let's see if they work. Okay, pretty much exactly what we expected. We expected to see in the anvil size, or in the impacting mechanism of the anvil, the dogs, the weights, the springs, those sorts of things, the weights to increase, there to be more inertia basically, because the actual RPM impacts per minute really didn't change much. Just, I believe the impacts per minute went up 150, which is not enough to double the power. Anyway, it's exactly what we found out. However, the up-end wire size was pretty interesting as well, so definitely maybe drawing more current there, or maybe they saw something where there was a bottleneck in that system. But still, the DCF891 does an amazing job, mostly due to the fact that we have an increased size and weight of the impacting mechanism. 120 grams difference when you boil it down to it. What was it, like 430 to 550? So quite a bit of difference there. In weight to then drive that power. So there you have it. Hey, make sure you keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Have a good day. Keep smiling.